Welcome to the NFL MVP Momentum Podcast. I'm Sam Holcroft alongside Payton Thompson. Before we begin, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP, follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast, and check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. So today we're going to talk about our 5 words or less statements about particular teams' seasons so far. But before we do that, we got to recap last week as per usual. Some major stuff happened in the standings. So let me start off just by talking about me. I went 11-5 last week. I did not get my upset. Didn't get my double down. That doesn't happen all too often. I have a 112-68 record at 136 points, which puts me in second. Payton, kind of a rough one. You went 7-9 last week. You did get your double down, though, with the Chiefs over the Raiders. You're at 109-71 at 128, which puts you at the bottom of the standings. Zeke went 10-6. Did not get his upset, but got his double down. He's 117-63 with 142 points, which still keeps him at first. But Sean, oh my goodness, went 14-2 last week, and the only 2 games he got wrong was the 2 NFC North games, the Packers and Lions and the Bears and Vikings. That puts him at 113-67 with 134 points, which actually jumps him to third place. He also got his upset and double down. So then that'll move us to our Overreaction Monday statements. I'll start off with Zeke's. So Zeke's overreaction for the week is the Dolphins are not the team that we were thinking. With how they played against, let's see, who did they also play? So they played against the Jets, and they destroyed them on Black Friday, if I remember correctly. I think what Zeke's trying to say here is that this team has been very good, very bad, and pretty mediocre at times throughout this entire season, depending on who they play, because they say, Dolphins hasn't beat a team with a winning record, I think, all season, if I remember correctly. But yet in some of those games, they've been able to hang around. Like they hung around with the Eagles, they hung around with the Chiefs. But the Dolphins have a fairly easy schedule kind of the rest of the season, assuming that the Bills are going to take a step back. But yeah, the Dolphins kind of are all over the place. Right when you think you know what this team is, you kind of don't.
Yeah, you kind of said in the middle there kind of what I was thinking. They really just haven't shown that they can play, their game against some of the best teams. They can whip on the really bad teams, put up all these crazy stats like we saw, I believe, in week 4. But they gotta beat the good teams to really show that they deserve that AFC Championship crown. So, it's going to be an interesting development. Obviously, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle have had, Jalen Waddle's had injury problems this season. Obviously, they lose a chain these last couple weeks, and now Tyreek Hill's a little bit banged up. I believe he's going to play on Sunday. But yeah, we're going to have to see them play against good teams and show that they deserve to be there. So
definitely. My overreaction for the week is the Eagles are the most Super Bowl ready team in the NFL. Now, PT, I know you're going to hate hearing this since you're a big Cowboys guy this year, apparently. But I just need to say this. At some point, you need to just realize that this Eagles team is a good team. Yeah, they might play down to their competition. I mean, I was even saying that early off in the season. They were playing down to their competition, but they have had so many critical wins and ways that they have won by shutting teams out. If they didn't make one bad play call, one bad play decision against the Jets, they're undefeated right now. Other than that, their coaching late game has been superb. I mean, look at the Bills. Even though that they're probably not a good team, they might not be making the playoffs. That is still a good football team. Whether or not they're playing good or bad, that is still a good football team. They were losing with less than a minute left. They go down there, kick a 50-some yard field goal, and go win it in overtime. So the Eagles are the most Super Bowl ready team in the NFL because of the way that they have played. You can't deny how they have been winning games, especially in the last month.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I don't think, you know, I don't hate the Eagles, and I don't think the Eagles are like I know the Eagles are a really good team. And so like for me, it was never really about not thinking they were a good team, but it was just me having confidence in the Cowboys more so. Um and I still don't think they're going to make it back to the Super Bowl. I still have questions that they're going to make it to the NFC Championship game. I think there's a good chance that they do. But I want to see them have multiple, deep runs in the playoffs again. How often that happens with teams, I don't know. But I feel like there's going to be a team that knocks them off early, and people are going to be surprised, and I'm not going to be. So, I agree. I agree with this take that they're the most Super Bowl ready team right now, but there's a lot of football still to be played this season.
So PT, if you want to go into this one, or I can go into it for Sean's
Yeah,
overreaction.
yeah, I'll go into it. The Bills are frauds. They've they've pretty much, a couple years ago they went into this ascending team that you could definitely see, they were younger. They really just needed a couple more pieces, running back. They needed, another wide receiver next to Stephon Diggs, maybe another tight end. Coaching has always been pretty solid over there. But it just seems like the further along this team goes in the season, the less confidence I have that they're going to have sustainable success. I think this is definitely probably going to be their worst year in as far as like a retrospective of the last 2 years, and I think that they're probably not going to be this bad again. But I mean, I can't say ever, but I don't see them being a team that you really have to worry about. That's young, that's going to get a whole lot better in the future. I think they're going to be able to make another playoff run eventually, whether that's next year or the year after that, because Josh Allen is that kind of guy. And I think that the coaching is still good, although it's questionable sometimes. I just don't think that there's a whole ton of AFC teams that have as much upside, but as far as this year, they're just not there, and they've taken some steps back. So, I don't know what it's going to take, but they're going to have to kind of restructure some things in the offseason. But yeah, I mean, they're not in the position to make the playoffs this year. They don't have the confidence. They don't have the momentum. They don't have that rapport between Diggs and Josh Allen, even though they've had incredible stats. You got to have the wins to go along with it, or else it's for nothing. So, yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs.
Yeah, and if you look back in the playoffs in 2021 in January, they were in the conference championship against the Chiefs. They end up losing, and then in the playoffs in 2022, they lost to the Chiefs in the divisional, and then they lose to the Bengals earlier this year in 2023 in the divisional. And like every year has been kind of taking a step back. Like they lost in overtime where they were 13 seconds away from beating the Chiefs in 2022 to getting blown out in 2023. Like, it was either they lose in the wild card this year or they don't even make the playoffs. Is kind of like how their end of their season has been trending. Um, and I'm just kind of nervous that maybe the Bills might shoot the gun early and fire Sean McDermott. Or, maybe they just go into a full rebuild. I don't expect that from a team like this, but like if you see a trend going, you need to address that before it becomes a problem. Because like what if they try to keep the team around and everything and they start off 4-10 next year? Or have a losing record early on. And it's like, when do you want to start that? Especially like, because how many first round picks now, hypothetically, how many first round picks could you get for Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs if you wanted to rebuild? A lot.
Yeah, yeah, you could get a lot. I just don't know if I would be willing to trade Josh Allen. Um, I think that's what it comes down to. I'd be much more willing to give a different coach, a shot at it. But and I think Stephon Diggs would be a little bit more valid because I think his type of receiver archetype is a lot more replaceable than a quarterback like Josh Allen. Although Josh Allen's had turnover problems all year, and that's kind of been
Yeah,
his
his
thing all
entire career.
career. His career. Um, I just don't think there's many quarterbacks that are better when he's playing at his best. Uh, so I think it's really tough to put that kind of package together. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting what they do. All right, with my overreaction, let me put the hooks in your back. Derek Carr is not a good quarterback, and I believe he's bottom 15 in the NFL. I think a lot of the time when he was with those Raiders teams, I think he was a good quarterback, and I think he had a couple special seasons there. But as of right now, he's just not the kind of guy that's going to be able to take this Saints team over the top and into real, you know, I guess contending. He's not going to be able to be that guy. He can maybe get an NFC South title or two. But what does that really mean? I mean, if he could do that, maybe he's getting 8 wins. But I mean, that's a team that's pretty much just giving the Cowboys, a bye week pretty much. And so, I think when you look at his stats, particularly like the red zone stats, he's bottom 20 or bottom 20 in all the red zone stats that you look at. He has a really tough time scoring when he gets down there. And I know how that feels. I was a Matt Ryan guy for a long time, and he was kind of that guy too. He could pass a whole ton of yards down the field, but when you got to the red zone, it was either a stall, interception, or a field goal. So, or a turnover, I should say. So yeah, I mean, I feel like at his best, at his ceiling now, he can be a top 15 quarterback on any given day. But when he's consistently mediocre, I can't put him in those talks. So and before I'm off on that point, let me rattle off some stats for you. So inside the 5, his rating in the NFL right now is 31. So you maybe they just run the ball. Maybe it's just a little bit tight down there. Let's say inside the 15, where's he at? He is at 32. So it gets worse. We'll say maybe we'll give him 5 more yards. Maybe inside of the 20. Maybe he can score 5 more yards. He's at 25. I just don't really see how it can be worth the money that they're giving him and all those picks. One more stat I'll give you. Season total QBR, he's sitting at 22. I think, like I said, on any given day, he can be a good quarterback, but he's not worth the money right now, and he's not going to be that guy that they traded all those picks for and all that money for. So right now, he's a bottom 15. He's not top 15.
I don't know how to respond to that, PT. I don't. You know me.
I
like numbers.
You can just say you're right.
But you're not. Here's the thing:
the numbers
how can you be a top? How can you be a bottom 15 quarterback in the NFL when you're going to be playing in the playoffs? In theory, that means you're a top 14 quarterback in the NFL.
No, not necessarily. Not if your division is terrible and the other 3 quarterbacks aren't top 15 or even top 20. And then the other thing is it's a whole team stat. If the defense can play well enough to get them stops and to keep, Derek Carr on the field enough to get those field goals and points, then you can make the playoffs. But because the way the NFL is set up and it's not based off of your record, it's based off divisional winners, I don't really think that's valid.
Yeah, this is a conflict of interest for me. So I have to choose to listen with my heart and not see with my eyes. So that's what I'm going to do with this. All I'm saying is people have been doubting Derek Carr his entire career. So when he wins the division this year, beats the Cowboys, and then beats the the Eagles, then you're going to have to retract this statement.
Hey, if you can do that, I will wholeheartedly retract this statement. But it's not happening.
All right. Okay. So now we'll move on to our 5 words or less. PT, you can go ahead and start off. You're going with the Lions?
Yeah. These are going to be kind of quick. Mine for the Lions is Dan Campbell is our guy. I feel like Dan Campbell is really the coach they've needed for so long, for so many years. And, they're finally looking like a real football team after so long. And, Lions fans have come all the way. The ones that have stuck around have come all the way from being 0-16 to having a real shot to be, a good team in the playoffs now. So shout out to the fans that stayed. You finally got your coach. And I think no matter who's on the team, you're going to have the guy that's the head of the snake. So
I have the New York Jets. And mine is how to donate an Achilles. So, the Jets I mean, with knowing how their season has gone down, I think that we could both agree that they could have 2 to maybe 4 more wins than they already do if they would have had Aaron Rodgers over Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle. I think it's Tim Boyle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just 4 plays into the season, Aaron Rodgers goes down with his Achilles, and we kind of knew that the Jets season was kind of probably done for. We know that that defense is spectacular, and with how that defense has been playing, with the exception of I think that Dolphins game, they have been playing pretty good football. So if they could have had Aaron Rodgers, would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, mine for the Titans, and it kind of plays in the same, the same vein as the Lions, I guess. The Titans finally have their franchise quarterback, or I guess if you want to do the 5 words, our franchise QB is here. I don't know if I'm quite willing to, put in all my money on Will Levis, but I think he has the most potential that we've seen in a quarterback suit up in the Titans, with the Titans, and I couldn't even tell you. It's been forever. So yeah, I mean, it's something for Titans fans to look forward to in the future. It's something they can build around. They really just have to keep building around that offense because as of right now, they really don't have much to work with there besides an older Derrick Henry and whatever else they're working with on the outside there. So yeah, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah. The next one I have is the Arizona Cardinals. I wish I could do 6 words because I want to say to tank or not to tank. Um, Kyler Murray came back a few weeks ago and faced the Falcons, and then they won, I think in overtime, if I remember correctly.
No
Um,
regulation, but it was the final drive.
it was regular.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, but they won when they could have potentially controlled their destiny on getting the number 1 pick in the draft. And then they've played some competitive games as of late. I mean, they've also been competitive early on in the season as well. Um, but it's like, why bring Kyler Murray back if you want to get a top pick? Or are you keeping Kyler Murray? Are you drafting a quarterback? It's like, what direction do they want to go for? Because if they don't care about getting a quarterback, then they can win and they could get another offensive lineman like they did this draft. But it's like, what is the Cardinals' direction? You're a bottom 5 team talent wise, so why not try to get the highest draft pick possible?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing over there, but I don't know. So mine for the Saints is going to be no assets, but NFC South. This kind of goes back to the Derek Carr thing that the back and forth we went with the divisional and how much winning the division really matters in this league. And they don't have a whole lot of money. They gave Derek Carr all that money in the offseason. They got a lot of older guys: Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Cam Jordan, Tyrann Matthew. So all those guys kind of taking up a lot of their salary. And I know they're in salary cap, purgatory right now, so they're not really going to be able to make their team much better outside of later picks. But they know that with their veteranship, they're going to have a chance to win games because it's such a weak division. And what I'll say about the Saints, just quickly, I think the Saints are a talented football team. I think they have players that they can work with, but in this division that matters. But they're going to be in that I guess what we'd call it is the NFL purgatory or the mediocre teams that really don't have much of a chance to do anything. So, kind of like the Cardinals, I'm not really sure what their direction is going to be, but if they want to have NFC South titles, go for it.
My next one is the Carolina Panthers, the biggest dumpster fire maybe ever. They just fired Frank Reich after 11 games. They traded away 3 first-round picks, DJ Moore, and then I think a conditional second, potentially, if I remember correctly, for the number 1 overall pick last year. Picked Bryce Young when CJ Stroud is playing to MVP caliber talents right now, which is hard to predict. But who wants that job? Realistically, like they just fired a coach after putting him in probably the worst situation out of any organization, even though he might have said, yeah, that's my guy, go get him. And they just overpaid to go get Bryce Young, and they didn't even give him a full year. I am always, when it comes to quarterbacks and coaches, I always say give them 3 full years, and then you can finally decide to move on or to change up. And 11 games. So they had to have known something was up. But yeah, it's like, who wants to go there, whether I'm a free agent, whether I want to be a head coach? Like, nothing looks good about Carolina other than the fact that they have a young QB.
Yeah, I know we're not really responding much to these, but just quickly on the Panthers. I agree with the firing. I think that they didn't want him to rub off too much on Bryce Young. And I still have a lot of hope for Bryce Young being a good quarterback. But yeah, man, it's just a dumpster fire over there. They're really the Chicago Bulls over, of the NFL because they have no assets and nobody really wants to coach there. So with
Yeah.
the LA Chargers here, um, it's too good to rebuild. It's a really, I would say they're kind of like the Panthers, but not as bad in a way. They're in a very awkward, position for them because they have players that are good, but they're not playing like a good football team. And I think a lot of that is coaching that we've talked about before off air and some on air as well. But a lot of the time, it's just players are not making plays. And I think, like I said, that is coaching, but I got to figure out like how much of that is really on the coaching or is it on the players just kind of losing their step or losing focus or losing confidence and faith. I don't know. Maybe that is a lot of coaching because if they actually had faith in the offense, then they'd be confident, they'd play better, and so on. But you see Keenan Allen drop a pass in the end zone. You see, Austin Eckler, fumble right there down in the red zone. And it's just like very uncharacteristic kind of things. But they're also, not young enough where it's like, okay, we can give these guys time. It's really only Justin Herbert and maybe a couple guys on that defense, and Rashawn Slater on that offensive line that they can be like, okay, we have time because every other guy on that team, they need to win right now because this is their prime or they're about to, exit their prime. So yeah, it's and on top of that, I hated the Quentin Johnston pick, so I'll just throw that in there.
Yeah. I'm gonna do the Jacksonville Jaguars, and if you guys remember last year, I hit on this one real good. So I have two. But the main one is alpha wide receiver away. They are like, I'm not saying that they need to go get Devontae Adams, but they are like, like a Jamar Chase about 2 years ago, away from being very, very good. Trevor Lawrence is having a fairly good season, good enough to win a division, good enough to maybe make it to a conference championship game. Um, but his top receiver is Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley's had some really good games. He's also had some games where was he even on the field? Oh, he had 4 targets. Kind of thing. Zay Jones has missed some games. Christian Kirk's kind of been. He's not being the Christian Kirk from last year, so he doesn't really have that alpha. If they go out and get an alpha wide receiver in free agency this year, I don't know who else is available, but we'll dive into that in the after the Super Bowl. But if they could get one, this team is winning Super Bowls. I can guarantee that. And my second one for the Jaguars was Sam was right all along. So I just had to just remind everyone.
Just to throw it in there. My prediction for the Jags as far as the alpha wide receiver goes is I think they make a move for Mike Evans this offseason.
I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. All right, the Dolphins. I got championship or bust. We talked a little bit about the Dolphins earlier in the podcast. They're really gonna, I don't. Maybe this is somewhat of an overreaction, kind of linked with that, but I just feel like if this team keeps on stalling, where they could have done a little bit more in the playoffs, but if it's a first round exit or possibly even a divisional second round exit, I'm just not sure how much better this team can get. I mean, they can go out and get maybe another piece or two. I thought Jonathan Taylor was maybe the kind of guy. Obviously, it looked like they didn't need him this season. But when you have your running backs playing very well, you have probably the best receiver in the NFL right now. You have Jalen Waddle, who's a pretty good number 2, and you got a defense that isn't the greatest, but they're not bad either. I just don't know how much better this team can get before you can you kind of have to I don't know, change some things around. Obviously, they're in a lot different position than the Bills because they really haven't made it to those heights yet, and they haven't had so many times in the playoffs where they've stalled out. So they got some time, um, but they're also very close in that territory where if they don't start, putting it together, looking like there's some real progress, which I think if they were to make the AFC Championship this game, that would be enough for me to say, okay, I can give them another year or two. But if they don't make it there, then you have other teams that are on the rise that are going to keep getting better. I'm just not sure that they have the window for that.
Yeah, I feel like with the Dolphins, it's kind of like Indiana Pacers of that time when LeBron was in facing the Heat, or when he was with the Heat and they were
Yeah,
facing it in the playoffs. It's like everyone took the Pacers seriously until they played a good team like the Heat, and then it's just like they just could never get past them. So hopefully this isn't the Dolphins' ceiling; it's just being a good team, except for when you play a better team. But yeah, I like that one. For my Raiders, I'm focusing on the future. Um, they fired Josh McDaniels earlier this year. Didn't even finish through a second year. And the first thing that interim head coach Antonio Pierce did was bench Jimmy G. Aiden O'Connell's our starter. Now, whether or not they draft a quarterback in the first round next year, we'll find out. But right now, they're focusing on the future. And I think that includes this offseason re-signing Josh Jacobs, not letting him walk, making sure Max Crosby's happy, making sure Devontae Adams can be happy, making sure that there is a future for the next 2 or 3 years, because I think this front office, now that we have also fired our GM, has realized we have some youth and we have an alpha wide receiver in his prime. We just need to get the missing pieces. And the defense has been stepping up a lot as of this last month and a half. Like I used to dog on the secondary and be like, we had one of the worst secondaries in the league. In the last month and a half, we've been, that's like second tier out of the 4 tiers. And I'll take that, considering that, we've had horrible secondaries for the last who knows how many years. But I've thinking that the Raiders focusing on the future, they could try to make the playoffs, but what does that really help? Like unless if you said Aiden O'Connell is our quarterback of the future, there's no point in trying to make the playoffs.
yeah, I agree with all that for sure. With my Falcons, it's kind of the same, trajectory as yours, but just further along. We got to finish the rebuild. I feel like this team is so close to being the best team in the NFC South for years to come, but we got to be able to finish the rebuild effectively. I think the first couple years, I wouldn't say we drafted super well, but I would say we drafted okay. We got the tight end of the future, so I think we got the wide receiver and Drake London of the future. We got Bijan Robinson, we got Tyler Algier. We spent enough money on the defense to look good. I wouldn't say we're a top defense, but we're definitely probably about league average. I think Jesse Bates is probably a top 3 safety in the league this year. But I think to finish this rebuild, we got to get a quarterback in there that's going to be able to have that high upside. I'm not completely out on Ritter, but I'm getting pretty close to the point where I feel comfortable saying that if we were to draft a quarterback this year, I would say he could be the day one starter and play just as good as Ritter, if not better. And he's going to be not only younger, but he's going to have more upside going into the future. So whether we make the playoffs or not, I would not rule out drafting up for a quarterback. And I think that's the last thing that, we're going to have to do to finish this rebuild, whether it includes Arthur Smith or not. That's going to make sure that we at least have the roster to win the division every year.
And then the last statement I'm going to say is the Eagles, and this one's for Zeke. Super Bowl champs coming soon. Like I said with my overreaction, the Eagles are the most Super Bowl ready team in the NFL. This is very much more for Zeke than anything. I think he said something along the lines, if not the exact same thing in last year's, but I just think I had to reiterate it considering that we were doing our 4 teams last. So that wraps up our 5 words or less statements. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I did. Before we move on, I just want to ask this little tidbit. if the Eagles stall out this year and let's say the NFC Championship, God forbid the second round of the playoffs, what do you think the outlook of this team looks like? Do you feel like they've kind of wasted away the year and they have to be worried about it, or do you think they just keep on trucking? They have another couple years at least. What do you think?
So I feel like it's a wasted season if they play a good game and lose. Now, like I'm not saying that like it's not a wasted season regardless, because I mean they're the most hyped team and they are going to be probably the number 1 overall seed going into the playoffs. So anything short of making the Super Bowl is falling short, or maybe even winning Super Bowl. But I will say this: if they lose the way that the Bills lost in the divisional against the Chiefs, where they scored 2 touchdowns with under 2 minutes left, and were winning with 13 seconds left, and still end up losing that game, and what you could say is a good game, then I don't think that you could say that this season was a failure. If they lose the way that like the Bengals beat the Bills in the playoffs this last year, then maybe you could say that this was a failure, because a team like that shouldn't be losing. If it's like Jalen Hurts throwing one bad pass like in the Jets game and that's how they lost and their season ended that way, then I feel like then this season's wasn't a lost cause. Because like it's like one thing, like they could have fixed this one thing. It's if they played a bad game, then yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. Okay.
So now we'll move on to our picks, or sorry, our upsets, double downs, and picks. We'll start with Zeke's upset, which I'll tell you what is already wrong. Seahawks over the Cowboys. Us three all went with the Cowboys. That was last night's game. Nothing really to add there. I mean, Zeke, you'll see he's been going with some crazy picks, but who knows? Maybe, I mean, standings have shaken up this last week. Things might be going crazy here soon. My upset of the week is the Titans over Colts, which is this next game. I am the only one going with the Titans here. You guys are all going with the Colts. I like the Titans in this game. No Jonathan Taylor, but that hasn't stopped the Colts at all this year. But it's a home game for the Titans, and I feel like that Will Levis and D Hop and Henry are going to have a good enough game to win.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty fair. I was pretty split on this game. I just feel like the Colts have some good momentum, and obviously losing Jonathan Taylor is going to be kind of a hit to them. But I think Zach Moss and company will be able to keep playing their game plan, and they'll come out with the victory slim.
Sean's upset for the week is the 49ers over the Eagles. And Zeke is the only one going with the Eagles here. I said all this stuff about the Eagles all podcast, and now I'm going to contradict myself. But I'm going with the 49ers based on this one reason. If the 49ers do not win this game, they cannot be the 1 seed. I don't see the Eagles losing enough games for it to happen. They're still going to have to bank on the Eagles losing one more game and the 49ers winning the rest of their games in order for the 49ers to be the 1 seed in the NFC this year. So the 49ers have something more to play for than the Eagles. Now, with the Seahawks loss, it doesn't make this a dire win, but definitely 49ers have something more to play for.
Yeah, definitely. I would pretty much say the same. I don't think the Eagles are necessarily worried, about the outcome of this game as much as just having a really good finish to the end of their season. If they lose this game and they don't lose another game, I don't think they'd really be too worried about it. So.
Right. PT, you're upset for the week?
Yeah, mine's going to be the Texans over the Broncos. Now, I believe this is an upset because the Broncos have been on fire. I believe winning the last 5 games. They've really looked like a different football team, but I really feel like every single game the Texans play have been very competitive, very close. They could have easily won. They could easily be in the playoff hunt right now. And I feel like they're going to keep playing that hard nosed, defense along with CJ Stroud and Tank Dell playing very well over the top. And I believe Noah Brown should be coming back this week. So, I think that they're a very good football coach team. And I have them cut out with this one.
Yeah. Zeke's the only one going with the Broncos here. Well, yeah, you, Sean, and I are all going with the Texans. Um, I really think that the Texans are just the better team. So that's why I went with them. But I will say, if the Texans win this game, I will 100% guarantee that the Texans will make the playoffs, and I will 75% guarantee that the Broncos will make the playoffs if they win this game. So this is a very important game for the a wild card spot. But if you lose this game, it can't rule you out, but it does make the path a little bit harder. For the double downs, Zeke is going with the Broncos over the Texans. So a conflict of interest, which I didn't catch there. It's always you and Zeke. Every single one this season, I'm pretty sure,
it
has
is.
been you two. I
Yeah.
don't know how that keeps happening.
Unintentionally. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. But my double down for the week, I feel like it's a pretty easy one. The Buccaneers over the Panthers. Surprised no one else picked this one. Frank Reich just got fired earlier this week. Yet Zeke is still going with the Panthers here, making some risky plays, thinking he's going to expand his lead, but now he's just going to let me just keep crawling to first. But yeah, any thought of the Panthers getting picked here?
Don't be surprised if we see a different Panthers football team on Sunday. That's what I'll say. Obviously I still have the Buccaneers winning, but don't be surprised if we see a close game. Dare I say, maybe a last 30-second field goal. I think they really could do it, but no, I'm going with the Bucks. But don't be surprised if it's close. Don't be surprised.
All right.
Yeah.
Sean has the Jaguars over the Bengals for his double down. We all agree here that the Jaguars should win this one. I mean, Joe Burrow out for the season. They just didn't really look that good against the Steelers. And if the Steelers can beat the Bengals, then Jaguars sure as heck can.
Yeah, at this point, the Bengals might as well just start tanking for a really high draft pick. Obviously, they're not going to go quarterback, but potentially they could trade down to a team that really wants one of those top three quarterbacks, and get even more picks to surround Joe Burrow and that defense. Or they could just take a top defensive player and try to build the defense that way. So yeah, I think the Jaguars have all the room to play for, and the Bengals just really don't have any motivation to win this game.
True. PT, you're a double down?
Yeah, this might surprise you, but I got Jets over Falcons. This is the classic type of game that the Falcons, respectably probably should win, but we're not going to because too many things on our side go wrong. We have too many mental mistakes, too many penalties, and just maybe one too many turnovers. And I guess I'll kind of go into the reason why I took the Jets in the first place, as well as my double down. Is I just feel like this game is going to be very heavily relied on both defenses, and I just feel like the Jets defense is a little bit more dependable than the Falcons at this point. The Falcons will play good defense, but they'll break down once you put some extra pressure on them, especially if you can keep that offense off the field. And both offenses are going to be really bad. So I'm assuming it's going to be a really run heavy game. But that means a lot of stacked boxes. And I know the Jets are pretty big up front. So yeah, I got the Jets.
Yeah. So Sean and I went with the Falcons. You and Zeke are going with the Jets here. I really just like the Falcons here. I mean, it's New York in December. That means Arthur Smith's going to run the ball, right? Like, he's been more pass heavy than I was expecting this entire year. That may be because they were down a lot in games, but they need to run the ball here. Algier and Robinson need to combine for 50 rushes total. Or Cordero, add Cordero in there. Or Ritter with some QB runs. You need to run the ball at least 50 times. Control the clock. That offense isn't going to do anything, so you need to wear down that defense and win. Control the time of possession. This is the game that the Falcons need to get the momentum back. Yeah, they won last week, right? They won.
Yeah. Yep. Against the Saints.
Oh yeah, I see.
26-15,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, against the Saints. Yeah, which is a good win. But
Mhm.
what you need to do is continue the momentum. 2 in a row, and then not only that, but separating the gap even more
Yeah.
between you and the Saints. And because
Yeah.
the Bucks are also right there, but you already beat the Bucks, so you need to keep separating the gap. So I feel like the Falcons are going to control the tempo of this game and dang near probably almost 40 minutes of time of possession. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing about this game as well. I think this game means a lot to the Falcons because one, you show that you can be an AFC team that you should be. We lost to um, the Titans and then we lost to the Cardinals. So that's a team. Those are teams that we should beat. So maybe we can break that kind of curse of beating teams that we should beat. And not only that, but it adds an extra clinch to that NFC South spot. Because after that we have the divisional two opponents again, and then we have the Bears, and I think the Colts. So a very winnable record, but it's going to have to start here. So yeah, it's a big game.
Yep. So that wraps up our upsets and double downs. We'll just go into the picks. I'll go with this first one. We all agreed with the Chargers Patriots. We're all going the Chargers here. Although the Chargers have looked kind of sloppy in their last few games, I really think that the Patriots are probably tanking. They benched Mac Jones. Bailey Zappi's not much better. I just think that too much talent here to lose. And if they do lose, Brandon Staley has to get fired. Just has to. I've been calling it for 3 weeks
Yeah,
now.
I mean, yeah, he should have got fired, like you said, 2-3 weeks ago. And I don't see any way they lose this game. I mean, I don't. The Chargers need to win this game if they're going to have any chance to do anything this year. But you know, yeah, the Patriots are tanking from Drake May, I think, so it might not matter either way.
Yep. PT, you can go into why we all picked the Lions over the Saints here.
Yeah, I'll go into it. I don't know if there's much to go into, but I'll say the Lions coming off that really bad loss on Thanksgiving Day, they want to get that bad taste out of their mouths immediately. The Saints, obviously, they lost. They're also going to be at home, but on top of that, they lost Chris Olave to a concussion. They lost Rashid Shaheed, I believe his name is. Their other wide receiver, Michael Thomas, is on IR. And yes, and what's his name? Their defensive guy. His name is slipping
Jordan?
my mind. Yeah. Cam Jordan also went out, I believe, with a knee or an ankle or something like that. So they're just riddled with injuries right now. And so I don't know how they're really going to compete much against the Lions team that's going to come out and play very aggressive.
Yeah. I completely agree with everything you said, except for the exception of Derek Carr being a bottom 15 quarterback. So when he throws for 303 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this week, I might need you to retract that statement even sooner, considering he's
If
had
he
his top
does
3 wide
that,
receivers all taken.
if he puts up that line, I'll give you $5.
Okay, perfect. You heard it here
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
With the Cardinals Steelers, 3 of us are going with the Steelers. One's going with the Cardinals. It makes no sense. Like I said for the Cardinals and the statements, the 5 words or less, it makes no sense for the Cardinals to win this game. So I'm going with the Steelers because they want to make the playoffs. They know the Texans are on their butt. Texans own the head-to-head, you know, so they need to win this game. This is a very winnable game. If they don't win this game, I'm nervous that the Steelers might not make the playoffs.
I think you'd agree with me. You wouldn't necessarily mind if the Steelers missed the playoffs either, but in that context for them, yes, they do need to win this game as well. I just think this is the type of game that it's going to be close, like the usual Steelers types of games, but just the coaching is going to make a big difference with Mike Tomlin knowing how to get out of games like this. They're at home as well, which is going to make a difference. And as long as Kenny Pickett can do a little bit, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm out on Kenny Pickett.
I am also out on Kenny Pickett as well. I don't know if you were just mocking me, but I am out on Kenny Pickett.
Oh no, I am. I'm agreeing.
Okay. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw me say that in
I did
one of
see
the
you say
few
that in the
texts.
group chat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm out. I'm out on Kenny Pickett.
um, the Dolphins and Commanders. All three of us again. You, me, and Sean going with the Dolphins. Zeke's going with the Commanders. I don't know what Zeke's doing with some of these picks. I really like the Dolphins here, especially after their Black Friday game.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins might have 7 or 8 sacks this game, and I don't think that I don't think this offense is built to be a high-powered offense on the other side like the Dolphins. I think if anything, I hate to say it again, and I hate to bring them up in conversations and relevance all the time, but the Commanders are built to beat teams like the Falcons who can't do anything on offense. They're not built to beat the Dolphins who can put up 18 or 21 in the first half. So yeah, I got the Dolphins because of their offensive firepower.
Yeah, definitely. The Browns and Rams. Once again, you, me, and Sean are all agreeing with the Rams, and Zeke's going with the Browns. I mean, the Rams have won 2 straight now against the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I don't trust the Browns without Sean Watson and Nick Chubb, so it's hard for me to keep picking the Browns. So I just got to go with the Rams.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to say the same thing. I mean, I believe DTR is also out as well, and obviously Deshaun's out for the year, I believe too. So I don't know who's going to be their quarterback on Sunday. Another thing that I think is pretty important to this game is Denzel Ward being out, their number one corner, because Cooper Cup is finally kind of getting a little bit of momentum. I know he's been really quiet the last few weeks, but he won't have a real number one corner to kind of keep him in check all game. With Puka and Tutu Atwell as well, and then Tyrone Williams is also back. So I kind of see them as the type of team that they might not do much, through the year, possibly a wild card, but they're a team that you can't just sleep on and not have to worry about when they're healthy.
Right. And then the last one we all agreed on between the Chiefs and the Packers. We all agree that the Chiefs are winning this one. PT, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, Chiefs are just a better football team in general. I think the Packers got to be, feeling good about themselves coming out of that Lions game, but I just don't think that this team really has what it takes to beat a team like the Chiefs. Obviously they can beat a good team here or there. I don't think they should have beat the Chargers. I think that was totally a Chargers type of game. But they did beat the Lions, but I feel like that was kind of a fluky Thanksgiving kind of day where the Lions are just sleepwalking, and I don't think that's going to happen to the Chiefs, especially after they just saw them beat the Lions. So, yeah, I got the Chiefs.
Yeah, the turkey made the Lions sleepy. That's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. They were just thinking about Thanksgiving dinner when they were playing that game.
Exactly. Um, so that wraps up our picks for the week. We already got the Thursday night game. Already has the updated standings with Zeke at 142. I'm at 137. Sean at 135, and PT down at the bottom 129. A lot can happen.
Jordan
A lot can
Shrug.
happen, PT. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, you and Sean, I think, picked the exact same thing every single time. So the only way you can get him is by the upsets and double downs and him getting his wrong. But you can make some ground on Zeke, which getting closer to the top is more important than getting closer to third. Unless if you're just fighting for podium, which, I mean, you totally could be, I guess.
Yeah, man, no biggie. I'll get my way up there. No biggie.
Yeah, I mean, we're 2/3 of the way through the regular season. There's still plenty of points to go around, so plenty of
Hmm.
games too. So I think
Yeah.
this is the last week of bye weeks, or maybe next week, and then it's 16 games from there on out. So like a lot can happen. I mean, look at that. Sean went 14-2 last week, and we thought your 13-3 was almost as perfect as it gets.
Yeah. I think we'll see 1-15-1 this season, but I don't think we'll see the coveted 16-0. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean that should be an award in itself too. That'd be
Yeah, that should
that'd
be
be
like an
amazing.
extra 2 or 3 points. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, But yeah, once again, Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Momentum MVP. Follow our Facebook page at MVP Momentum Podcast. And check us out on YouTube at MVP Momentum Podcast. Ivan Sam Holcroft.
Ivan Payton Thompson.
Thanks for listening.